So as we move up, temperature will decrease. So if we move in the climate region, temperature will increase, and in case of E, as we move up, temperature will decrease. So this is the climate region. So in case of A region, we have temperature will always be greater than 18 degrees Celsius, and in case of B region, we'll note the thermal region. In case of we have C region have in winters maximum temperature will be minus 3 degrees Celsius, and minimum temperature is minus 3 degrees Celsius. Maximum is 18 degrees Celsius, and minimum is minus 3 degrees Celsius. In case of D region, we have in case of summers, temperature will be greater than 10 degrees Celsius, and in case of winters, temperature will be less than minus 3 degrees Celsius. Now next we have the E region. Here he divided the E region in the two parts. That is E, T and E, F. And the dividing line is 0 degree Celsius in summers. So the E, F region having the temperature less than 0 degree Celsius, and in case of ET we have summers temperature is greater than 0 degree Celsius. That is, we have the tundra type climate. So we can learn it for like T for tundra and F for permafrost region. So this is the whole classification done by the Köppen's scheme of classification. Now again he will divide these A, C, D on the basis of season. Now he will divide A, C and D on basis of precipitation. How he will divide? F is equal to rain throughout the year, and S is for summer dry, and W is for winter dry, and next M is for monsoonal type. So these are the further classification of A, C and D type of the climates. Now what is the B type of climate? He used B for the dry conditions. How? That is based on the precipitation and evaporation. Precipitation and evaporation. So the areas having the evaporation, where the evaporation is more than precipitation, the areas having the evaporation more than precipitation is represented by the S, that is steppes, grassland. And the areas having the evaporation is much more than the precipitation, where the evaporation is much more than precipitation, he denotes these areas is by W. That is arid region or the deserts. So in dry conditions, we have BW and BS. So BW is for desert and BS is for grassland. And in BW and BS he further classified BW, which is used for the deserts, is further classified into two, that is H is for hot and K is for colder. And in case of BS, which is for the grassland, was further divided into H and K. H is for hot, that is in tropicals, and K is for cooler, that is in temperate areas. So this is the B type of the climate regions defined by the Köppens. That is the dry climate with deficient precipitation during the most of the year. So we have B, W and H, B, W, K and B, S, H and B, S, K. So these are the classification of B type of climate. So BWH is for tropical, desert, W is for desert and H is for hot, that is the tropical desert which are hot, and BWK is for the cooler desert and BSH is for the tropical grassland and BSK is for temperate grassland. So we can divide the so we can conclude the B type of the climates in these four types. So in case of deserts, so we have some tropical deserts, And we have some polar deserts. That is, tropical desert is represented by BWH because they are hot, and in case of the polar desert it is represented by BWK, that is the colder one. So the tropical deserts are Atacama, Sahara, and in case of the polar desert, that is the continental deserts. We have Gobi Desert, Karakum Desert, and we have some permafrost desert also, that is which is represented by EF, that is permafrost. So permafrost are also the cold desert. Example are, in case we have Arctic and Antarctica. So these are the different type of the climate regions, classification of the climates as per the Köppen scheme. So if we talk about the change, cause of climate change, it can be because of natural factors, and it can be because of some anthropogenic activities, anthropogenic factors also there. So if we talk about the natural factors, it can be because of the variation in the solar radiation, how it will affect. Though 70% of the incoming solar radiation is absorbed by the Earth's atmosphere, oceans and the lands, and the output of the sun is not constant. So this variation over the time can impact the Earth's climate. And the second, we have the change of the Earth over a long period of the time, changes in the Earth. So the Milankovitch cycle refers to the three changes in the Earth orbits around the Sun, that is eccentricity, axial tilt and the precession. So these collectively affect the solar heating and the reaching of the Earth's surface, and they influence the climatic patterns. So the next natural factor which will affect the climate change is the volcanic eruption. How volcanic eruption will change the climate, affect the climate? So when the volcanic eruption can release, it will release the significant amount of the CO2 and the other gases. It will release CO2 and greenhouse gases, and these gases will contribute to the global warming. So it will form global warming. And plate tectonics. How plate tectonics affect the climate change? So the formation of the new oceanic crust at the mid-oceanic ridges and the subduction of the old oceanic crust beneath the continental margins can alter the ocean currents and affecting the transport of the heat and the other elements. So it will also affect the climate change. And next we have the oceanic currents. Ocean currents will also affect the climate change. Oceanic currents plays a significant role in determining the Earth's climate by transporting the heat and the moisture around the planet. So it will the ocean current which will it will the oceanic currents which will transport the heat and the moisture to the Earth. So as there is changing the oceanic currents, it will lead to change in the climate factors. Now there are some anthropologic factors also. So out of them, one can be the burning of the fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels. That is the burning of the coal, oil, and the natural gases. It will release the amount of the CO2 and the GC into the atmosphere. CO2 and the GC will be released in the atmosphere. And deforestation can be a reason. Tree absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so deforestation can increase the climate change. And some agricultural practice also. Agricultural practices. Agricultural activities such as the uses of the fertilizers and the raising of the livestock release the greenhouse gases, and they will emit into the atmosphere, led to the change in the climate change. And last can be the land use changes. Land use changes. How this will affect the urbanization and the other land use changes contribution to the climate change by altering the balance between the carbon dioxide uptake and release. That is, it will affect the balance between the carbon dioxide uptake and released. So these are the some factors of affecting the climate change. So some global efforts to combat climate change. First, in 1972, first UN Convention on the Environment. So result of this is the United Nations Environmental Program is formed, UNEP will formed. Second, we have in 1979 first World Climate Conference. First World Climate Conference and the establishment of the World Climate Program. The third we have in 1988 we have the establishment of the International Panel for the Climate Change. There we form the International Panel on the Climate Change. In 1990 the UN General Assembly negotiation on the framework of the convention. UN General Assembly negotiation on the framework of the conventions. And in 1992 the Rio Earth Summit that is the text of the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change is adopted, and objective of this is to curb the GHG emission and adapt to climate change. So objective of this is to curb GHG. Next, in 1994 we have United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change enters into force in 1996. In 1996 it will entered and signed as a treaty, and 196 countries in 196 countries signed this treaty. Next we have in 1997 Kyoto Protocol. So the world's first GHG emission reduction treaty, that is the reduction GHG treaty. Next in 2005 Kyoto Protocol enters into the force. It will enters into force. And in 2009 we have Copenhagen Agreement, that is COP15. Negotiation failed after USA and China withdrawal. And here we have negotiation failed because USA and China withdrawal. And in 2010 we have COP16, the green climate fund and the technology mechanism and the adoption are established. That is in 2010 green climate fund and the technology mechanism were established. In 2011 we have COP 17, in which the government commits to a new universal climate change achievement by 2015. So they have set a target for 2015. Now in 2015 they have the COP21 and the adoption of the Paris Agreement. Adoption of Paris Agreement by 196 parties. Of UNFCCC, that is happened in 1994. Next in 2016 Paris Agreement entry into force of, and in 2011 and 2021 we have COP26, and in this the Glasgow Climate Pact adopted. And in 2022 we have COP27, and here the Sharm el Sheikh agreed to establish a loss and damage fund. So these are the efforts made to global efforts to mitigate the climate changes. Temperature data is available from the middle of 19th century. The Western Europe. This is nothing to do.